Welcome to This Week in Coworking, where industry leaders get succinct, actionable insights. Here are your hosts, Hector Colonas and Mike LaRosa.
Hey everybody, welcome to the first This Week in Coworking recap episode for 2025. Mike, how are you? How was your new year?
I'm good. I think I, like many of us, just completely checked out for 2 weeks, which was nice. But yeah, we're diving back into the year. There were 65 different links sitting in the queue for us. So that means that the email this week was pretty chock full. We've got, I think, four pretty big stories that we want to dive into. So I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely. So everybody, welcome back. We hope you got some time offline. I hope you got some time to rest and get away from your spaces for a little bit. But now with the new year and Mike, as you said, there is a lot of stuff happening this year. We got a lot of trends we're following. On the topic of trends, let's dive right in with the first story. Last year and the year before, we started seeing some spaces experiment with this notion of crowdfunding, some kind of starting out with their initial founding members, being able to crowdfund and build up that initial capital to get that first location open. Then we saw some more operators using it to expand. We saw the team out in the Netherlands at Scale Hub. They started doing a crowdfunding campaign late last year, but this year, starting off right out the gates, we saw 1,000 satellites out of Germany. They launched a €1 million crowdfunding campaign, basically to fuel their expansion, but also to boost their profitability. They have secured around 300K already pre-crowdfunding round, and they're looking to open new locations using that cash and also using the cash that the crowd is bringing in. Mike, what are your thoughts around the kind of the crowdfunding campaign route, or also what 1,000 satellites are doing?
I think that crowdfunding is a really successful strategy for some flex workspace and co-working operators. I think that there's a lot of people out there that like being invested in real estate, and this is a great way for them to get involved in what I would believe investments that are more like community oriented or local oriented. I think it's really awesome. I think that as the industry continues to grow, more people are starting to understand the ways to sustainable business longevity. And it's more than likely typically either through owning the asset or just having different business structures. So if they're already profitable, they just need a little boost. I always think it's really nice to hear, you know. And I think as time of recording, I checked it about an hour or two ago. The meter said they were over 400,000. So I'm not quite sure if that's in addition to the 300 or if that's inclusive of that 300, but they're well on their way.
That's awesome. And for folks who haven't heard a lot about 1,000 satellites, they have got 12 locations already. So definitely not a new operator, but are looking for sort of that raring growth. A lot of the press that they put out late at the end of last year was around how they're different from the network that was built in the train stations that went under last year, and how they're positioning themselves as a better, more sustainable and efficient alternative to the network that closed down in Germany. So we're definitely going to be watching on that, and hopefully this time next week we can say, hey, they hit their target. It's now the latest successful crowdfunding co-working company.
Well, we're moving right along. Let's see here. Next up is a story that I'm super stoked to talk about. CBRE announced that they were separating their financial headquarters from existing office space in NYC while still keeping their global headquarters in Dallas. So basically, this is just like the CFO office and anything financial, as well as I think in some of like their financial products and investments. What's so interesting, what's so exciting and cool about this is that they've signed a lease for 6 floors, of which at the very start, two of them will be Industrious. So Industrious will be managing those 2 floors. It'll be marketed as an Industrious. It'll be monetized as an Industrious. The employees of CBRE that are on the remaining 4 floors will have access to that amenified space, but it's what the industry is now terming this fixed flex HQ strategy. So it's really cool. I doubt that they would have to flex down, but you never know what will happen. But it most definitely was being spun as an ability for them to flex up. And so CBRE, having invested $230 million in total into Industrious, to show off how they're implementing that model in their own use of space, I think will speak volumes to what we'll see. HQs are not going away, but like the flavor, size, and shape and how they're delivered are changing. I don't know. What say you, Hector?
It's definitely great to see them essentially putting their money where their mouth is. It's like in every way of the pun that you can possibly spin that,
Yeah.
putting their financial HQ with an entity where they have got that flex, they've got that spillover space, they can leverage the amenities. I know that it's also in Lever House, which is a pretty prestigious location. I
Yeah.
know Jamie Hodari is very excited about the fact that they've finally been able to put something into that building. So I think it's going to be a really interesting rollout to see how are they going to use it. Is it going to be for that as you said, spin up, spin down space, or is this also just a really good example for the rest of CBRE's customers who are exploring this? Do we use an HQ plus flex approach? And it also reminds me a lot of the stuff that Tashi over at JLL in the APAC region is already doing with landlords, right? Really building in these combined recommendations and building it into buildings. So it's going to be a really interesting project to watch. I know that both the Industrious team and the CBRE team are all excited about this. Has hit us from multiple channels while we were curating the newsletter this week. So really, really big news to see this being put into practice and not just from the investment perspective.
Yeah, and I think from just an outsider's view of the coverage, everyone's got some skin in the game, which is, kind of, I think, where everything's headed towards in, commercial real estate. It sounds like it's a blend of a lease or, because we know for a fact that CBRE leased those 6 floors. So I have no doubt that if it's for the financial offices, those CFOs were probably very diligent as to understanding, they're mitigating and they're already unburdening themselves of that risk of those other 2 floors, because I'm sure that there's a top line and bottom line share on that. So really creative example for what I think is to come. And, there are awards programs for like best real estate deals out there, so I wouldn't be surprised if that got one of them for 2025.
Yep, coming in early and coming in hot. But it
Well, it
also
is
is
it is
allow.
award season, right?
It is, but it also allows us to see, could this set precedent for capital markets, right? With the investment team and the financial team who work really, really closely with all the financiers of most office buildings, showing them that there is not a net zero value on those 2 floors. It's everything leads to everything else, right? So I think it's going to be a pretty good play. Hopefully they make it ultra successful and we can see more projects like that throughout the year.
And on that note, a topic that we're going to dive into next, we were geeking out for about 30 minutes. We couldn't record that conversation. But to go back to it, to your reference about financial modeling or whatnot, we've included a CEO's predictions for AI for 2025. There's a ton in there. He had like 33 total in the link he ended up posting. But we were talking specifically, AI is touching 3 main kind of areas, right? Backend data, how people interact or search, like anything that's UX or UI, and then last of all, how buildings are being reassessed or just how financial models are being compiled. So I'd love to get your take, Hector, on let's dive into one of those 3 because we got a little bit of time on this week's episode to focus on one of these stories. It might as well be AI, right? That's the term of the year already, I assuming.
Yeah, I mean, AI is going to be an absolute massive part of this year. And I think it's also going to be splitting into AI is the technology. AI is the internet, the web. What was built on the web was then websites, web apps, tools, email, Gmail, Google Maps. So we're getting to that phase really, really quickly now. And that's with the whole like agentification of tasks. We saw Microsoft CEO, Salesforce CEO, both come out over the last couple of months saying agents are going to change everything. We're getting very quickly to a point where it's not going to be about interfaces. AI is not going to replace software. It's going to replace how you interact with software. And that is coming really, really fast to commercial real estate. And it's kind of replacing the fact that all these legacy systems And unintegrated systems and closed systems won't be able to be closed for long because it's not going to be humans connecting. It's going to be systems, it's going to be these agents interacting with agents. And that's actually one of the other undercurrent topics for this year is what happens when it's all agents all the way down. I'm not sure if you know the internet lore of it's turtles all the way down, but if an agent is interacting with an agent, that's interacting with an agent, that's interacting with an agent, and something goes wrong or something comes out that's unexpected, how do you fix that? How do you think about how do you resolve that? I think that's going to be one of the biggest undercurrent threats or challenges for 2025. So absolutely a huge trend. And Greg hits it on the point where it's going to change how we interact with technology. But we also have to think about how do we prepare for that as an industry that has some fantastic technology and some not so fantastic technology that both have to come together and create this entirely new way of interacting with the physical space.
Yeah, you make me think in listening to what you just said that oftentimes I get frustrated as to why has there been such a slow adoption of technology within our industry, but it's also because it is such a person or human or staff person centric business, right? You walk into any building, there's someone there to check you in. You go into any office, there's if not a community manager or a space manager, there's the receptionist or the admin for the occupier. It really is fascinating to see people still want that human interaction. They don't necessarily want to be talking to a hologram, right? But as the AI evolves, not only how do you supplement having that person, but then also how do you better empower that person, right? Or be more efficient where you can still have one person, but maybe you don't have to have one per floor, or you don't have to have as such great density. So I try not to focus on the AI is going to replace everything. I'm trying to lean into what you shared more of like AI is changing how you do the things, not
Yeah.
necessarily replacing the people that do it.
Yeah, I think you raise a really good point, and hospitality is about that human element, right? But the biggest thing that's been pulling back, especially in our industry and most hospitality industries, is the things that detract or distract the best employees from being able to deliver that experience. Now, if you can bring in technology that allows the operating team or the front of house or the community manager to do what they love doing better, faster, more efficiently, forgetting less, all of that, you've given them an entire new
Yeah.
superpower to be able to do the things that we are all talking about. And we're not taking the human out of it. We're just allowing the human to focus on what makes them human, the empathy,
Yeah.
the understanding, the thinking. But I think we're going to see this really interesting shift. And that's what I'm saying. It's about that evolution of agents, right? Once you know that it doesn't matter about which technology you have to look at. You just have to interact with some interface that's going to know what has to happen in different places, but can also remind you intelligently about, hey, someone got married a year ago. Why not drop something on their desk? The person who came in for a viewing, they visited 3 years ago on another event. Like this information that exists in other systems, but you wouldn't logically think to go look for it, makes you like appear and be able to serve a customer in ways that delight them that you wouldn't have been able to do today. And that
Yeah.
is where I think we're going to see this level upping of how the best operators are able to serve even better and provide even better experiences because their people are focused and are able to focus on delivering that instead of all the other things they have to do today.
It's pretty exciting. It's very similar to what was coming out of CES this week from Delta, right? They are rolling out an agent of sorts. And it's to your point, it's not just that the person would know to look for, but that at scale, the person you can now actually have it be proactive, right? Because you can call an agent right now and they have to then search for this stuff. But if you've got different agents working in the background, we've seen that in some capacities, like your flight's going to be delayed or whatnot. But just think about how much more impactful it
Yeah.
can be. Pretty exciting. Now, there is a point though where sometimes it could be a little problematic. There was an interesting story that caught your eye from India. Do you want to tee that up?
Yeah. So another CEO was actually complaining or venting out on Twitter or X about how when they were just interested in joining a specific WeWork location in India, they got put through the very rigorous and rigid sales qualification process. When are you looking to move? Why are you looking to move? How many employees do you have? Asking all the questions where the person just really wanted to have a human conversation about what are the benefits, what are the costs, and what the actual post's about is what happens if you have too rigid a nurturing sequence or a sales sequence that tries too hard to qualify or disqualify your leads. Could that be affecting your business? And obviously, we saw the CEO of WeWork India respond, get involved. Some per AE or sales head got a bit of a scolding, I'm sure. But when you think about, with context, what we were saying before, right now it's one bad script, one bad outcome. When you have agents and agents and agents and agents and all these AI systems interconnected and they're all trained on a bad system, every poor decision that goes in is 100 bad outcomes that come out, right? And that just amplifies every piece of training, every piece of process, because it might be fine for you to qualify leads like that in specific cases. But unless you've clearly defined who you should be qualifying, or at least understand who is speaking to you before you put them through this process, it's like, if the CEO of JP Morgan reached out to your contact form because he happens to be in city on a holiday and he needs somewhere to work, you probably don't want to put them through the lead qualification process if is that the kind of space you're running. It's just about figuring out and putting that human logic to the process to be able to break out and be able to process a bit out of that. But yeah, it does come down back to what we were saying a bit earlier. If that salesperson had agents to help them, they probably would have been able to pre-qualify a lot of those questions and have a more human interaction because he didn't rely on the customer giving him those answers or giving her those answers. So it's just a little bit of it definitely caught my eye, and it's something that we're seeing a lot with our customers at Syncaroo about what happens if you implement the right things on top of the wrong things, or the right technology on top of the wrong frameworks. What risk does that pose if you don't think about it thoroughly?
I'm fascinated now that we're talking about this, understanding that that's a different perspective than I thought you were going to have. So, from reading, and all you listeners out there, tell us if you think one or the other. But my takeaway was that it was actually the human element that was the problem, and that it was an attitude. And so, how I comprehended that was, so I'll never forget. Growing up in a pretty well off suburbs in high school, I worked at a Best Buy, and there was a guy that came in one day and he was wearing like track shorts and a tank top, and no one was willing to talk to him because he actually didn't look like he was serious. But for some reason, the guy decided to drop, 12 grand. And I'm dating myself. This was, 25 plus years ago on like a huge TV, whatever. But it was the tweet that I read from the guy was more like he felt like he was walking into like a luxury dealership and he was being
Mhm.
judged, right? And so I totally agree with what you were saying, is that understanding what sales prompts do you have? Are they too stringent? Because no one wants to go through a whole litany of like 25 questions, right?
Yeah.
But also there are some benefits to maybe removing that element of the human component, because I think that also it's a little bit cultural, right?
Mhm.
I've done business with that specific location. It's very popular. It's in a very up and coming area of that city in India, and I'm not surprised. Like that was, I wouldn't put it past the salesperson. Like you said, they probably got a good reprimand, but it is interesting. I think it's more of the human component. I think maybe they were just trying to be a little bit bigger for their britches and just trying to, it was more of an ego play there, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you,
I mean, it also reminds me of early co-working in London,
yeah,
where a lot of the spaces were you had to apply, you had to go through an application, you had to do an interview
yeah,
in order to then find out the pricing
yeah,
of the co-working space. We're obviously seeing this with a bunch of the membership clubs. And when we talked last year about the new space over in Manhattan, and all these different types of exclusive memberships. So it's interesting to see if some spaces are going back to that, and maybe we're reading it wrong. Maybe, I mean, if the CEO hadn't said that it was an error, I would have been like, maybe this is just that location. This is an exclusive location for an exclusive clientele, and they want to keep it more selective. We're definitely seeing nichification across the industry. We're seeing spaces with childcare. We're seeing spaces with golf simulators and golf courses. We're seeing this week there's another story about Porsche investing in a space that's specifically for baby boomers. So it's interesting to kind of see this different carving up of the industry. And if there's going to be one brand that takes it all, like WeWork's trying to do, obviously, or if there's going to be all these different pieces that are different brands to different markets, going back to the hotelification.
Do you think they're still trying to do it all? Don't you think they learned their lesson? I mean, I think they had quite a humble turn there.
I mean, I definitely
I mean,
think that
by no means are they the largest anymore, and that's no
yeah.
shade. It's just by pure fact. So
I mean, I don't think that I think they've always
maybe
been an
that's part of the
ambitious team,
problem.
right?
Maybe that was part of the issue with the selling of WeWork. I don't know. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, WeWork India has been popular and profitable for I think
Yeah,
2+ years now, 3 years.
yeah,
As WeWork US and the rest of the world kind of went streaming towards bankruptcy, WeWork India has
yeah.
been
Up, 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 up,
profitable,
up. Yeah,
right? So I think it is that. I think it's also, the fact that maybe that location, that clientele, they were looking for, just to kind of
it's a
filter.
very high demand location. Like it's literally a country club or golf club. Like it's
Yeah.
it is.
So
It's a nice
yeah,
spot
it could be
apparently.
that. But that also, it could brings it back. Like, how do you have one brand feel
Yeah,
if you're doing a country club, but also a, you know, downtown grade B, grade C building, right? I think
yeah,
that is one of the struggles that we're going to see WeWork tackle over the next couple of months is who are they and to who, and how does that compete with a multi-brand entity like Vast or Regis
yeah,
or IWG, where they can afford to have like an easy offices in one location or a signature in two different locations and have two different experiences for the customer, because it's really hard to do that when you're one brand, one entity. You have an exclusive membership, but you also have
yeah.
all access passes and servicing kind of the public market. So I think that's actually an interesting way to look at this as well. Is this just WeWork India trying to figure out who is their clientele, what is their reputation, what is their customer relationship structure or culture? I think maybe this poor sales rep just got caught in the middle of that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, as always, our debate jumps all over the place, but we come and we tie it up in a nice bow. Any parting thoughts for this week, Hector?
Parting thoughts for this week is, we're super glad to be back. I'm very excited about sharing more stories this year. A big part of our ethos at This Week in Coworking throughout 2025 is to highlight more voices, share more faces, and really highlight stories from around the world. So wherever you're listening in from, if there's something that's interesting in your area or with your business, or you're celebrating something, hit that share link. Anyone who's subscribed to the email newsletter can submit links for free. They go straight into our curation engine. As Mike said, we went through about 60 earlier today to get this week's newsletter ready. But before then, there's thousands that get put through the engine, and the 100-ish come out, and we pick and choose what we should share. But we want to share your stories. So wherever you are in the world, however big or small your network is, submit your stories, share them with us. We want to hear from you. We want to share your stories and want to bring you on and chat with us.
Awesome. Well, I think we're gonna get back toward the rest of our week and make sure that newsletter hits inboxes in time, which you all would then have read by the time you're listening to this. So just the magic of technology, we're giving away a little bit of our timeline. But yeah, but it's great chatting as always with you, Hector. I appreciate the time.
Likewise, I look forward to jumping in again next week, Mike. I know we've got some new co-hosts jumping in over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be a fun first quarter. Always a pleasure, Mike. Take care of yourself.
Ciao.